Hello, everyone, and welcome again to another episode of Fan Fuel Motorsports Podcast. This is a podcast where fans fuel talk about motorsport. And I'm joined tonight by Colton Cranmore, a couple of our other hosts, Jared and Nathan. They're both busy tonight. They may be popping in a little bit later in the show. We hope so, certainly that they do. But this is Fan Fuel, and it's not just about being a fan. It's not just about liking motorsport. If you notice our episode today, episode 54, we've titled it Cold Day in the Sun. Myself and Colton are pretty big Foo Fighters. For me, they're my favorite band fans. So I just wanted to do that kind of to pay a little bit of tribute to Taylor Hawkins, the drummer for the band. He tragically passed away on Friday. And so before we get into the motorsport stuff, Colton, let's just talk about Foo Fighters and Taylor for a little bit. So how are you in the fandom of Foo Fighters?
I'm pretty big. I gotta be honest. I don't listen to them as frequently as I used to a few years ago, especially like when I was working out. They were some of my go-to music. But I'm still a huge fan. I still make sure I download every album that they put out, every song that they put out, just because they never seem to stop writing bangers.
Right.
So, I mean, this one was tough. I've had lots of other favorite band members and musicians die in the past, but this one it felt more weird, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, for me, I've seen them 4 times, albeit one of those was not in person because it was a pandemic show, which is what my T-shirt's from. But they put on one of the best shows in live music, and even if you're not a fan, you have fun at a Foo Fighters show. I think they're one of the bands that just doesn't have any controversy most of the time. Dave Grohl even at one point had a Dale Jr. guitar, which was pretty badass. Mm-hmm. But when it came to live shows, especially for me, Taylor was basically the heart of the band. Everybody knows Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters. You don't hear about, who their bassists or their keyboardists or whatever are. But if you're a Foo Fighters fan, you know that Foo Fighters doesn't really exist without Taylor Hawkins. So, I mean, that man made the shows. The chemistry between he and Dave was something that you don't see in a lot of other bands even. And so it's really, really just a sad time for all of us who are Foo Fighters fans. So we just wanted to take a moment and say that our thoughts are with Taylor's family, his wife, 3 kids, and then, of course, the rest of the Foo Fighters and fans, because this one was a really big hit. I mean, for me, this was one of the musicians, one of the famous people, really, that actually hit me hard, because it felt like, you made a relationship just by being a fan for so long. But, yeah. So on that somber note, I do want to obviously change it up, but I did want to shout him out. So go rock the Foos for a couple of days. Just go watch concerts, whatever, just to see a little bit into what Taylor Hawkins brought to the table. It'll be worth your while. A great musician and a great person. Sad to see him pass away like that. But anyways, let's get right back into the show. And Colton, I'm going to steal the show for a little bit. We're going to talk about some international stuff. We had some road racing in NASCAR this weekend, but we are Fan Fuel. Nate and I usually talk about the international stuff. He's sadly not going to be with us for this first part of the show. And I did want to get into some Formula One stuff. The Saudi GP happened this weekend. We had a little bit of controversy of whether or not it was going to happen, because we had a bombing near close to the track, which was something that was very interesting. I'm not going to speak on that because I don't know anything other than that it actually happened. But the race did go on, and it was the second pretty much straight banger for Formula One in as many weeks. And that was very good for their sport, very good for their new model car. But I do want to say something, that we do have 2 back-to-back start times within 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. starts with F1, and that was really good. We saw record-breaking numbers this weekend. So I have to ask a question to you, NASCAR fan Colton. What's the gig? What's the gig? Like, why are we still starting at 3 p.m. if Formula One's pulling in its most viewers ever in a U.S. market at 1 p.m.?
TV is the only thing I can really think of. I posted a meme on Twitter the other day of, have you seen Trailer Park Boys, of the whole, what are their names? Trevor, Corey, new TV contracts. Let's go, because NBC and Fox are starting to kill any kind of momentum that we gather, because a 3 p.m. start time here, you're running into dinner on a Sunday night.
Absolutely.
With Formula One, they're getting folks in the middle of the day, maybe just getting home from running errands, maybe just waking up, maybe just getting home from church. There's nothing on. You're a race fan. You're going to throw on some Formula One. And that's especially different from me. When I was a kid, I used to remember, and even just, probably this year, in the last couple of years, having to get up super early if I wanted to watch a Formula One race. And now it's kind of changing the tides a little bit and getting it kind of into that prime weekend TV audience of the morning to, early afternoon slot times, where people are sitting around, not much to do. So I think NASCAR definitely needs to take a look at that, and needs to take a look at when their peak numbers were in terms of viewership and start switching some of those back. Not only does it give you more viewership, but it expands the window if it does start to rain or if there's some inclement weather coming. Now you all of a sudden have an extra 3 to 4 hours to maybe drive the track at places that don't have lights like Talladega.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a huge – we talked about it a little bit last year about the start times. But this is going to be a front burner issue here soon if Formula One keeps jumping up in ratings like this with these early start times in the U.S.
Yeah, and you do have a point, but it is a global sport. So what happening in a couple weeks is they'll be in Australia for the Australian Grand Prix, and it's probably going to be 1, 2, 3 a.m. start. So we'll have to really look and see what ESPN's going to do, because they haven't had an Australian GP since they've been in the rights for them. I do believe. I could be wrong. I think they came around in 2020, not 2019, which is the last time we had an Australian GP. If you know and you're in the comments, correct me on that. But we're gonna have to see if they're gonna do a replay at that 10 a.m. start time that they usually do with these European races. So if that's the case, and it does better than the one that's live, at 2 a.m., NASCAR is going to have to look at something, because to have Formula One jump them in the next couple of years would be the biggest failure that we could see as fans of NASCAR in the sport. Not saying that I don't love Formula One, but it's never been number one. And if it ever does get to number one, I think that's signing the door, nail in the coffin for our NASCAR. But I'll get back to the race. We'll talk about some stuff that's a little bit relevant to our discussions later. And let's go ahead and look at some of the controversy that happened. And that was Sergio Perez and Lewis Hamilton were caught out each differently during the race by a virtual safety car and safety car, respectively. We saw Checo go into the pits right before a safety car came out while he was leading, and that basically mired him to outside of the top 10, I believe. He worked his way back up to finish, I believe, fourth in the GP, which was astonishing. But Hamilton, when he got screwed over by the virtual safety car, he stayed in the back. He did not finish in the top 10, as far as I know. So we'll get into that a little bit later. I'm not going to spend too much more time on it. I do want to, however, jump to Australia. I am a huge Supercars fan, and I've been hounding Colton, I've been hounding Jared, hounding Nathan, and everybody that I get a chance. You guys have got to buy SuperView. It is the best $7 I spend every month to watch the V8 Supercars. And if you don't want to do it, watch the old races, because they have full seasons on their YouTube channel. They have had two events so far. They had Sydney Super Night, and that was, I think, 3 weeks ago. And it showed why Supercars is king on road courses. They had two very different races. They were both strategy races. One was at night, the other one was during the day, and there was rain involved. We saw Chaz Mostert come out and do his thing on the Sunday of Super Night, and then Shane Van Gisbergen had a huge tackle to overcome a penalty that he had in the front of the race, came back and finished 8th. And you don't do that in Supercars. It's like he never even had the penalty. And then we returned to Tazzy from last night, and Shane Van Gisbergen dominated all three this weekend, and I can't say anything but if you don't know about the Tasmanian track, it is basically Martinsville made into a road course. So go watch it. I know I'm just kind of really running through this because nobody that I know watches supercars. So I'm just trying to get y'all to watch it. But they have a new car coming out next year, and it is better than the next gen car by miles. They're going to have near 1,000 horsepower. It's going to be a Ford Mustang and a Chevy Camaro, and they are 1-to-1 with their production models. And you can go look up a 5-minute video of them testing at Tasmania at the Simmons Plains circuit from this past weekend. And Marcos Ambrose and Garth Tander, both champions in V8 Supercars. Of course, you all know Marcus from NASCAR. They were putting on a race themselves, just being the two cars on track. So I would suggest go watch that, get ready for Gen 3 Supercars, and watch them next year if you're not going to watch them this year. So I'll stop talking about my supercars that I love so much. And Colton, it is time to talk about Circuit of the Americas. And before we get into Woke or Joke being back this week, what were your overall thoughts for the weekend?
I thought that Sunday's race was decent at best. I thought the finish was, for me, I did not like the finish, other than the fact that I picked Ross Chastain to win in our little podcast group. And so when he punted Allmendinger off, I got up and cheered for that. But other than that, I'm thoroughly disappointed with how drivers race nowadays, especially at road courses. I thought the race, any form of strategy that could have played out, was completely neutered. And I thought it was just kind of, 67 laps of, for the most part, single file, follow the leader, not a whole lot going on unless someone could get to someone else's bumper and slide them out of the way.
Yeah, and we'll get into a little bit more of that when we do our points for Woke or Joke. But for me, I think the word that comes to mind is disappointment.
Yeah.
We are at a Formula One racetrack. We are at an FIA Grade 1 facility. Circuit of the Americas is a premier track on the world stage, the premier track on the United States stage. And we have the next gen car, which was basically built around going to a road course to be a better show. And we could not provide that. And that was because we never got the chance. There was plenty of times that we had passing going on, but it was all because of the manufacturer drama. It was because of restarts. And it was because we didn't have a long enough run to showcase what the track itself and the next gen platform can do. And the reason I brought up supercars earlier is to call back to them, because they don't have gimmicks. They have shorter races sometimes, they have longer races sometimes, and that's where it really ends. They actually have strategy where they have to pit once or multiple times each race. They don't have stages and stuff, and they put on a way better product than we do on road courses because we decided that we have to chop things up. But that was just my thoughts on the weekend. So let's get into Woke or Joke. So as always, if you agree with the statement, we'll call it a woke statement. If not, it's a joke statement. This is basically all going to be about Cup until the very end. So you can play along at home in the comments, throw them up on Facebook and YouTube, and we can see them. But let's get started. So Daniel Suarez wins stage number 1, and on the restart gets taken out because of whatever happened in turn 1 when they were 6 and 7 wide.
Joke. I feel bad for Suarez. He was having a great day up until that point. He looked like maybe not the dominant car, but definitely one of the top 3 dominant cars, which is, good for Trackhouse because they had the other dominant car, I felt. I hate to see him have bad luck like that. I made a tweet this last weekend about bad luck Bubba, but it's getting pretty damn close with Suarez too.
Yeah.
I don't know how much closer he can get to just flat out dominating a race than what he was doing on Sunday before just, like I mentioned earlier, just people completely running over each other, which is what happened, and it sucks for him. He did come back to finish, I think, mid-pack just outside the top 10, but it still wasn't the day that we were all hoping he would have.
Yeah. Obviously, joke for me. Same reasoning, basically, but that wouldn't have happened if we didn't have the weird strategy that came about because we didn't go a fuel run for the stages or a tire run for the stages. So with having basically the whole field flopped over, you had guys that were way faster in the back where Suarez was than the guys in front, and we've seen that happen on an oval. And with turn one being as aggressive as it is already at Circuit of the Americas, you add that tire miss strategy in there for the start of stage two, and it was just a clusterfuck. So it was very disappointing, but Trackhouse got the day that they deserved. Like you said with Ross, they had the two most dominant cars there. I would lean towards the 99 being more dominant just because Ross couldn't walk out like Suarez could in that first stage. But having two out of the top three most dominating cars at a road course, and we have Hendrick Motorsports on the circuit, that's saying something because they're very, very good road course teams. And Martin Truex Jr. wasn't there all day. So, I mean, it worked out for him. So next up, cautions for the 7 of Corey LaJoie and 22 of Joey Logano.
Joke, when this happened, I immediately, again, back to Twitter, tweeted, why the hell was this a caution? Because they both kept rolling. Neither of them stopped. This was, in all honesty, just to create an overtime finish. I also made the joke that we're about 5 years away from mandatory green, white checkers in NASCAR, and this was just a step in that direction. We saw, I don't know, we're getting to it next, the Ricky Stenhouse incident. This was the complete 180 from it, complete opposite reaction that we were kind of expecting from NASCAR. I understand that 22 had some damage in his car, but he was more than able to limp it around by the time anyone really got to him. So complete joke, just manufactured drama at that point.
Yeah, obviously a complete joke for me as well. Inconsistency is the name of the game. If you are in the scoring booth for NASCAR, I don't know what the change needs to happen, but somebody's got to get fired at this point. We've seen it where at Martinsville you'll have a car stopped, and that's not a caution, but then the 15 is rolling on a flat on the outside of 3 and 4, and it is a caution, and that carried over to the second longest racetrack in length and the longest racetrack in lap time in the circuit on Sunday, and that's kind of ridiculous. So we've seen cars that were stopped, and we'll talk about that next, not get a caution, and then both of these guys, albeit Joey Logano had a just totally fucked suspension. They were rolling. They would have made it back to the pits at some point, and if they had to do anything with either of those cars, there's plenty of spaces on an FIA Grade 1 circuit for cars to pull off behind the barriers. So it's a terrible job by NASCAR for officiating those two. They just don't need to happen. So with that being said, let's talk about the caution that did not happen for quite some time. And you mentioned it, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., the 47, was coming to a stop very, very, very slowly on the back straightaway, and he got about halfway there, and he started rolling backwards before NASCAR threw the caution.
Yeah, complete joke again. You even hear Tony call it out in the booth and say, I don't know why they waited so long to throw a caution. It was obvious that he was going to stop. It was obvious that he was not under power. I mean, maybe they were waiting for him to fire off really quick, but we have not seen that out of any of these cars so far this season, where they completely die, lose power, or something breaks, and they just immediately fire right back up as soon as they stop. In fact, it's the opposite. Usually when they stop, they are completely beached and squatted on the track. So that was very, irritating. Again, just I don't know why they waited. And it was right in the middle of a pit cycle, which made it worse.
Right.
If this was just a normal green flag run, fine, okay, it's still inconsistent, but this really could have altered the outcome of the race way more than it already did. What if there were some of the really heavy hitters like Chastain and Dinger that didn't make that cut and that got sent to the back just for that?
Yeah. I mean, obviously this one's another complete joke. I don't know. They called it out on the broadcast that this was manipulating the race, and that's something you don't even see from Fox. They're usually right up NASCAR's ass, right? And obviously a little bit was Smoke being in the booth. He doesn't care. He's been at odds with NASCAR his whole career. I don't get it. Again, we are supposed to be the premier stock car series in the world, and we're trying to play games on other people's racetracks. So why aren't we adapting to the way that they do things? I'm not sure. The 47 is not in a dangerous spot there. Maybe that's why the hesitation happened, but you knew he wasn't under power. He was going to stop. Something needed to be done, or they could have turned him in at the access road that was a little bit farther up the track. So that could be under the spotters as well. I don't know what needs to change, but something needs to change. I mean, there were 7 cars, I think, that completed their pit stops knowing that something was going to happen, and we still waited 45 seconds for him to have the caution thrown. I don't know. We've got to do something. Back to what I said earlier about the weekend as a whole, just disappointing. We're better than this, So let's move to the reactions I saw, at least on Twitter and specifically Reddit, and that was that everyone was clamoring about this race after the finish. So was this a good race due to the finish, or was it just because of wrecking? So I guess to make it a woke or joke statement, the finish made this race fantastic.
I'm still going to say joke just because I'm not one that says a finish makes a good race. You have to look at the whole race objectively. This whole race was not good, and I am especially not a fan of the finish. I kind of alluded to it earlier that I don't think these guys anymore, and it ties back to Denny Hamlin's tweet over this past weekend as well, that guys don't seem to know how to pass, especially pass for the lead without completely running over each other. The bump and run is now long gone because if you don't do it in the very last corner and completely almost wipe the guy out, he's going to come right back and just kamikaze you. That used to not be an issue. There used to be a huge respect for the people you were racing against. There used to be a lot more give and take, and now it's all take. And it's just because of the emphasis that NASCAR has put on winning instead of on a good season. You now have to win all these races. So I did not think it was a good race at all. And ironically, it's the fans that complain about people watching only for the wrecks that seem to have loved this race.
Right. I will say on principle of the statement that I made, did this finish make the race fantastic? I will say I'm on the fence. I'm going to lean towards woke because it made the slog that was those 45 minutes worth of green, white checkers worth it. However, if I zoom out just a little bit from that statement, I thought the whole race was a joke. I thought that we didn't have strategy racing at all, so we couldn't see what was good about road course racing. We could not see toe-to-toe battles because the runs were too short to have tire wear come into effect or the chassis set up to come into effect so we could see comers and goers. And it only got spicy when we got all of those random-ass cautions at the end, and we couldn't put down more than turn 1 for lap 1 in each of these overtime finishes. And that is not only embarrassing, it's pathetic.
Yeah.
I understand that people like Monster Jam. I understand that people like demolition derbies, but I don't think that big loud noises and crashing is indicative of who the greatest race car drivers are in the world. And if we're going to claim that these are the greatest stock car drivers in the world, they need to fucking show me, because they're racing pathetically. Like you said, there's a lack of respect. I think one of Nathan's points is, I'm confident in saying this for him, we've talked about it on here. The safety that we have had in the last 20 years has made the complacency skyrocket for all of these younger dudes coming up, because they don't have to be scared of losing limbs, breaking arms, or dying anymore. So they don't know that respect for the car, and they definitely don't know that respect for the competitor. And
Right.
I think that's what led to the absolute shit show that was the last part of this race.
I agree completely. I think in regards to the fan reactions that we saw this past weekend, especially like I take Jeff Gluck's poll kind of every week and look at it objectively and, okay, why did people vote like this? I think it's because over the past 4 to 5 years, NASCAR has put such an emphasis on good racing is pack racing or good racing is passing, which neither of those are advertently true. And in response to all those, we have stages, we have unnecessary cautions, we have this, that, and the other that creates the pack racing, that creates the excessive restarts, so that NASCAR and the broadcasters can say, oh, wow, they're 7 wide going into turn 1, instead of, oh, wow, we're getting down to the last little bit of this long run to end the race. These guys are both on worn tires. Who's going to do what? When I think of what a good race is, especially like when I go to my local short track, some of the best races I've ever seen have been green flag for 50, 70, 80 laps. They haven't been just a 2-lap shootout and see guys beating the piss out of each other. Don't get me wrong. It is a novelty, and it's nice to have 2-3 times a year just to say, okay, that was kind of cool. But some of the best races I've seen is seeing a guy hunt someone else down for 20, 30, 40 laps. Right. And I think that's what a lot of fans are moving away from, especially fans that are our age that grew up with the Gen 4, the COT, some really great racing. And now they're going into, well, if cars aren't passing each other, it's not good racing.
Right. That leads to the interview. I want to say it was at Indianapolis. Maybe I'm totally wrong. Could be Pocono. It was definitely one of the summer racetracks where Tony Stewart said, look up the definition of passing and look up the definition of racing. We're racing out here. That quote. Yeah. I think that summarizes my thoughts about what happens nowadays in racing. Look at the next gen platform. I remember we had a discussion last year about when was the last time since stage racing happened that we saw an instant classic. We've seen with this new car too. We've seen, the Vegas and the Auto Club races. Phenomenal races, right? What did they do? They had natural cautions and not bullshit. So we get to these bigger, longer tracks. It doesn't matter if it's a road course or an oval. Big, long tracks lend themselves to, fuel mileage, tire strategy races.
Yep.
I would much rather see Daniel Suarez out there, 25 seconds in the lead, have done a 3-stop strategy. Somebody like Kyle Busch decides within 10 laps to go, I'm not catching this guy. I'm in second, goes in the pits, puts on stickers, and somehow pulls a fucking miracle out of his ass, passes him on the last lap. That over a 68-lap race would be absolutely phenomenal.
Right.
And we don't have that anymore. It's not conclusive of that. And that's a joke to me. So yeah. I don't know. You can look at my Twitter. I have been extremely crude when it comes to this opinion, and I'll get into it later when we get to our rant section, but I'm tired of looking at the sport and realizing that when people say we are the WWE of motorsports, it's actually true. Let's go to something that NASCAR has done in the past year, starting with Road America last year, and that's they are showing 1 to green not at the start finish line, but on the back straightaway, the lap that they are going to go green.
This is complete woke. I love this. It is a way for them to start speeding up these cautions, especially at these super long circuits that we go to. I love it. I think it's phenomenal that they're doing it. I think it kind of puts teams in a box to where if you want to pit, you have to do it now. There's no sandbagging it and trying to maybe see if someone else is going to pit in front of you. No, if you want to pit, you got to do it now because they might call one to go over there. I love it. I think this is phenomenal that they do it this way. Everyone's set. Let's just go ahead and call one to go instead of like we've seen time and time before at Talladega or Daytona. Everyone gets set, and then you still got another lap and a half or lap and 3/4 of pace laps around a super long track. Huge fan of this. I love that they do it.
Yeah, and I got to go a complete woke on that as well. We always harp NASCAR on not being able to make the right decisions, and we saw them do this at Road America last year, and that was probably the best rule change that they've made in the past few years. I would say I would love to see the choose cone implemented as well if we're going to do this. I think it's conclusive. I think it's more important at a road course where starting position can be very much influential to what happens post turn one. That would be the only thing that I think that they could improve on. This was a phenomenal change. It showed us that we didn't have to waste another lap each time that we went around Circuit of the Americas under caution this year. And that probably saved us 20 to 30 minutes just on Sunday alone because we had so many cautions. So moving on from that, we're going to talk about corner cutting penalties. They removed they're calling turtles. They were really concrete, like triangle
rumble strips.
Yeah, they were a lot more aggressive than the turtles that we see in the chicanes at the Roval and on the back straightaway of Daytona. They removed those, basically the little yellow pyramids that were there, and basically said you can have 2 tires on the red and 2 tires on the rumble strip. Anything else, and it's a penalty. So how was the penalty just overall? Was the penalty enforcement across Saturday and Sunday, was that a woke or a joke?
Complete joke. This is a fucking shit show. There's no other way to put it. We saw during the truck race, Haley Deegan was forced kind of out of that parameter, forced 4 tires over that strip that they were basing it off of, and they gave her a penalty. She was forced over again, didn't. There was another time on Saturday where both towards the end of the race, both the 9 of Noah Gragson and the 07 of Cole Custer had very clearly all 4 tires over that mark and did not get a penalty. But Jeremy Clements and Jeb Burton, both for 2 lower income teams, did get a penalty in a top 6 day for both of those guys. We saw on Sunday, a lot of the back marker guys got penalized for it. The 27, as well as the 34, Michael McDowell. But Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson did it all day and were fine. So this is nothing but clear favoritism for NASCAR of showing, okay, well, the big name teams can get away with it. It's almost like they're kind of being lobbied against it. This is a complete joke. They need to have a clear and concise rule, or they didn't just put those pyramids back or put dirt over there, something that's going to make it a penalty for the drivers themselves if they go off that. Judgment calls have no place in racing, let alone in a situation like this where you're going to ruin someone's day over a judgment call.
You're absolutely right, but I don't think this is a judgment call. This is as black and white, or in this case, as rumble strip or red paint as it could be.
To us, this is a judgment call, and in the books, it's a judgment. Or to us, this is a black and white, and in the books, it's black and white. But to NASCAR, it's a judgment call.
Right, and I think that's a complete joke. We see and you know what? I'm going to go down this road because NASCAR has this same rule at super speedways, right? Yeah. NASCAR has the yellow line rule, and you can't cross it. You know, whether or not you like the yellow line rule. The whether or not the yellow line rule is debatable. We've seen it ruin people's races. Justin Haley, Regan Smith both lost races because of yellow line rule. If NASCAR is going to stick to its guns, it has to stick to its guns on here. This is the yellow line rule on a road course. And you know what you can't do on a super speedway without getting penalized? Force a driver down. We saw them call that at Talladega. They said that Denny Hamlin was forced down, and I don't remember the driver who was penalized for it, but he got penalized for it and lost his finishing position at that Talladega race in 2021. And you know what we saw on Sunday? We saw the third best car, Chase Briscoe, get pummeled, and I believe it was by AJ in the S's, and they penalized him for getting all four tires off, not AJ for sending him over there. So I'm just going to call bullshit on the fact that you have a rule that has been in place for years on an oval, on a super speedway that you have enforced multiple times that you just did not enforce on Sunday because you didn't feel like it, I guess. How can you genuinely say it's fair to Chase Briscoe, who has already been penalized on the racetrack because he's been shot off and is losing spots because he's slowing down to reblend, to just make him go to the end of the longest line at the next caution because we didn't make it that lap because we were under the shit show anyways? I don't get it. I don't understand it. How is that consistent?
Yeah, I've always been on the side of if you want there to be a clear and concise barrier of where you can and cannot go on a racetrack, you either put a wall or you put grass. You put some sort of barrier there. You don't just call it when you see it, because you're not going to call all of them. You're not going to see all of them, or there's going to be some situations that finds a gray area in that.
All right. So while we are sitting here blasting NASCAR, our great friend Jared Bakaiza has finally showed up. Whatever he had earlier is over. So let's go ahead and welcome him to the stream. What's going on, Jared? You missed the first part of Woke or Joke, man.
What's going on? I actually got caught the end of what you guys were just talking about, and I completely agree with both of you on that. Whenever it comes to judgment calls in NASCAR, it's just always bullshit because it's always a 50-50 shot on whether they're gonna make the right call, or at this point, just either like what Colton's saying, just make it more noticeable, or just get rid of the rules in general and just whatever happens type of deal.
Yeah.
I mean, would you want to see that section of the S's just straight lines? Because I think that would be pretty fun.
Yeah, it would be kind of fun.
Take it.
I mean, in video games as a kid, what would you always do? You try to cut the corners on video,
right.
Just send it. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, then just put a big box around it. You can go off road if you really want to. Maybe put some ramps on there, or even have some shortcuts like on Mario Kart. If we're gonna try to play this as a circus, we might as well just add all those types of deals on there.
God damn, Jared came in with the fucking cutthroat stuff. All right, you need to save that for a little bit. We got a couple more Wilker jokes, and then we'll get into our rant session.
I do like that, Jared. Though, if it's paved, take it. Let's see what these cars can really do at Circuit of the Americas.
Yeah, if these are the best cars in the world right now, or whatever, might as well put it to the test. Let's see what it can do off road. Hey, it'd be a good preparation for Bristol Dirt in a couple weeks.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, so getting back to Wilker joke, I got two more for us, and first off, I'm going to go with the more stringent damaged vehicle policy on road courses. What do you think? For that statement, I think I'm basing it off of it takes so long to get cars cleaned up and getting them back to the pit road because NASCAR gives them a chance to get on the 6-minute clock now and then meet minimum speed to come back on the racetrack. So what do you guys think of a more so it's more stringent, more straightforward? Basically, if you got to get towed at a road course, instead of us wasting time to get you back to pit road, we're going to pull you off at the nearest exit, and that's it. I mean, what do you guys think about that? Walker Joe.
Go ahead, Jared. Go ahead.
I like that idea. I hated all the cautions just because it took so long to get refired back up. If you're trying to make this like NASCAR an event for like the casual fan. I don't think the casual fans want to sit there and wait like 20 minutes for like a single, let's say, like for example, a single car spin, and then there's 3 caution laps, like 10 minutes in commercials and all this hype up, and then there's like a turn or two of racing, and then there's another wreck. Like we didn't think that was going to happen, So whatever gets them cleaned up and fixed quicker, the better, in my opinion.
Yeah. I'm very on the fence because I'm not a fan of the damaged vehicle policy as it is. I miss the days of guys being able to go into the garage, work for 90, 100, 200 laps, and get back out there and try to collect a few more points. But if they are going to keep the damaged vehicle policy around, this isn't a terrible idea. If you need towed, just call it a day. Again, I'm not a fan of that policy at all, just in general. But if they are going to keep it, I'm fine with it just because the pace laps here do take so long.
Yeah, obviously it's my idea, my point that I brought to Woke or Joke this week. So I'm going to say Woke. I think if you look at open wheel racing, which is obviously primarily done on road courses, those cars are obviously a little bit more fragile, but so are the suspensions of our new cars now. If they get into a wreck and they get stuck, 9 times out of 10, they pick them up, put them over the barrier, and put the rider or the driver, onto a scooter to ride to the care center. And that's what I think we should be doing. I think that we're wasting a lot of time to get these guys back on track to do pretty much nothing. I think at this point in NASCAR's history, we don't have a reason to, because we got winning in playoffs and all that good stuff. Are we really racing for points anymore? Like you said, Jared, if it's a circus, might as well make it a good show. And I can tell you, one of the guys that is a buddy of mine that streams iRacing races, when the cautions come out, people stop watching. So I'm assuming that happens in real life as well. You're not really glued to your seat if you're watching guys go 80 mile an hour behind a safety car or a pace car or what have you. So that is what it is.
I have something to add with Colton's comment. I'm also not a fan of the caution clock thing. So, like, for an example, like, I'll be biased here and say, like, last year whenever Kyle Busch wrecked in, like, lap 6 of the New Hampshire race, like, I don't know if the car was unfixable, but I feel like you could probably fix that enough where you could at least race and he wouldn't have finished in 37th that week, so that I just wanted to add in. I also do not like the 6-minute caution clock repair damage thing.
I know why they want to do it, but that's again something that
plus it was always cool to see like all those beat up old cars that were making minimum speed out there, people using like duct tape for their numbers, or heck, you even got like Dale Jr. running Hendrick before he was even on Hendrick Racing. You never know what could happen with those damaged cars out there.
Yeah, and that's something that we lost. That's sadly, I don't think the world that we're ever going to get back to. So I don't know. If we're gonna continue down this road, might as well make it efficient, right? So that was just my idea. And finally, for Woke or Joke, we saw Jeff Gluck kind of put this out there. A guy named Jeffrey Miller on Twitter. He basically said that these cautions take too long. We need to implement a virtual safety car. So I will read the full tweet thread, and this is from him. You can go follow him at Jeffrey Miller, capital G, capital M, on Twitter to see everything else from this thread and all the comments. But basically, NASCAR could easily implement a virtual pace car system instead of a harder local yellow process on road courses. The solution is simple. A virtual yellow is called. Drivers have a set time to slow down to pit road speed. NASCAR already monitors speeds based on scoring loops, so they could just do this between scoring loops as they already do. Egregious offenders would be penalized. So obviously, if you're going too fast, they would give you a drive-through or whatever under the safety car, under green, hold you for 40 seconds under green, whatever, depending on severity of your speed. And then race resumes quickly once the hazard is cleared. And then This would he goes on to say this would work because the drivers already know the pit road speed because they monitor it before we get going every race, going through the pit road under pace laps. And it's the same exact technology that they use on pit road. It's just a little bit longer between each loop. So NASCAR VSC, woke or joke?
What you got, Jared?
I don't know about that. Yeah, I'm going to go with woke on that. I think we need to get basically whatever helps this process, kind of like how I stated before, whatever gets us through the less caution laps and stuff. I'm all for that idea.
I am not sure how well that would go over. There's already a hell of a time right now as it is. Kind of resetting the field after cautions. I know you wouldn't reset it with a virtual safety car. Ideally, everyone would slow down at about the same time and kind of keep their distance to the car in front of them. But you look at how often guys jump restarts as it is and how many controversies we have over that. This is just expanding from the front row to the whole field. I think it's a great idea to try to save a little bit of time and allow guys to save some of that track position that they have earned. But I'm not so sure how well it would actually go over.
So, Colton, I will say woke 100%. And I will also say something as a rebuttal to what you just said about not knowing how much should work. I don't think that we have to have the drivers in on this, right? So I think back to the first time I ever went to a go-kart track with electric go-karts. These electric go-karts have a system for basically a virtual safety car. When they want you to slow down, they can slow down the whole bunch. What says that we can't implement a limiter for this? It would be, let's say, 10 mile an hour faster than pit road speed, because pit road speed is not what the pace car does. It usually does 10 mile an hour faster than pit road speed. NASCAR hits a button, it automatically decelerates the cars and is a limiter. And until they press the button again to release it, the race is basically stopped, and all the drivers can do is hit the gas and turn. They already got them doing that at places like Atlanta now anyways. What's the difference to do it for a couple of laps under a caution? That way the race is just basically in a pause mode in real life. That's essentially what they do with the virtual safety car in Formula One. It's in the driver's hands. They get penalized if they don't do it correctly. We've got 40 guys out there. Maybe let the computer do it for us. I mean, why wouldn't it work?
Again, I agree. I do not know how well that would go over with fans, with
who gives a shit? Who gives a shit at this point? Because you've got half the subset of fans who are pissed off that we sat around for 45 minutes to finish the last 20 laps of the race on Sunday.
Right, but I feel like those fans wouldn't be upset about it. I feel like the fans who thought this race was great because of all the cautions would be absolutely livid if they saw a caution come out and Daniel Suarez keep his 30-second lead, which, again, I'm all for.
I don't think they have the mental capacity to know any better that it would change their opinion.
Just put scoring loops around the whole track.
I think they will bitch to bitch.
Yeah,
I mean, they're going to bitch to bitch already. And we'll get into that with our rant here in a second. But, I mean, so with all that being said, I was going to do a woke or joke on stages, but we've done that every time that we went to a race for a road course, and we did that 7 times last year. I think that Colton, and Jared, and Nathan's points when it comes to stages in road courses. I think we can all say JOKE, joke, is just what you're going to get for us. So let's move on to something that I think we should really discuss, because it's something that we've basically kind of been alluding to all night in the fan kind of viewpoint of what's going on and who the loudest voices are that are pushing the sport. And that is from Slap Shoes, a YouTuber. Many of you guys know he does fantastic content. Go check it out. He tweeted today, people be like, I hate Indy and Pocono. They are so boring. End quote. My brother in Christ, it was you who said you didn't want any more cookie cutter tracks. So I feel like these are the same fans that thought what we saw Sunday was a great race. But also, I think this is a good discussion to have. Why do we not like cookie cutters, but we don't like Pocono, Indianapolis, and road courses even for some fans? Well, I mean, just overarching.
Let me take this one here. Sorry, Jared. I got to go
Oh,
first.
you're good. I got
Biting my tongue about this all episode. I completely agree with Slap Shoes here. However, instead of more cookie cutter tracks, these fans are now wanting all of the races to be the same. They are wanting all of the races to either be Daytona, Talladega, or complete slugfest with a mandatory overtime finish to see guys completely junk each other to win the race. I mean, it's bullshit. We take out all of the unique tracks and what made those tracks unique to try to make them all the same. The 550 package ruined Indy. You know, the packages that we've had the last few years have made Pocono not a great race. And last year was phenomenal. Both those races I thought were great. We actually saw a fuel mileage race again last year, which was outstanding. Goes back to what I said earlier about the whole passing and racing thing. You mentioned the Tony Stewart quote, and he also says that if you want to see passing, we can go on the interstate and pass all day. I do not want to see pack racing all day. I do not want to see overtime finishes and green, white checkers every single week. I want to see those 5, 6, maybe 7 times a year. I do not.
When they're needed.
I want to see strategy play out. And tracks like Indy, the oval, and then tracks like Pocono are notorious for strategy. They're not notorious for side-by-side blowing your doors off racing. They're notorious for one guy outlasting another. So instead, like I said earlier, instead of getting more cookie-cutter tracks, they're actually taking away the unique ones and just making all tracks the same, which is complete bullshit. I think that some of these fans want pack racing at Martinsville. I'm dead serious. I do not know what they want because we see what we think is an absolute banger of a race, like the second Pocono last year, and we got people calling it boring because there wasn't a side-by-side car-in-the-wall finish at the very end. What makes a great race great is the fact that it doesn't happen every fucking week. If we start seeing the Darlington, Craven, Kurt Busch finish every single week, it's not going to be cool.
Right. I don't think people understand that. It's just like what we talked about last week with Cody when he got on here. It's the small brain winning. And I don't know why they're the majority of the fans right now.
If every day is Christmas, Christmas is not as cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Jared, what's your initial point?
Well, since people always slander Pocono, Colton kind of like hit the nail on the coffin with that one. Like Pocono's always been notorious for strategy races. It's basically like it used to be an endurance race back when it was 500 miles because you'd have guys blowing their engines halfway through. But you play strategy, right? I mean, Denny Hamlin won his first race spinning out in turn 2. Ended up coming back to win, so it's not like there was lack of passing. The track before the repay was really good with the old car, and I'm like actually excited to see how this new car runs there this year because even last year was really good, like racing wise with the 550 package that we had. So I think like Colton was saying, I don't want to see heck, people probably want to see pack racing at Pocono just because there's long straightaways, we can see drafting and packs on the straightaways, and then watch them all try to curve into the turns. I'm like, I don't want to see that. I don't want to see pack racing at Pocono. I like seeing races play out naturally. I don't like seeing green, white checkers every single weekend because every week before the race, I'm like, when's the caution going to come out? 10 to go, 5 to go, 6 to go, 3 to go. It's never like, oh, sweet, we're going to get to see a natural race play out or whatever. There's been so many races that have been ruined by a late race caution, and then everyone calls it like the race of the year or something, whenever in reality we were in store for a pretty good finish. Like let's go back to Las Vegas. We were going to see a really good Truex versus Kyle Busch, but no, we had to have caution come out. I'm sure there's plenty more we can go through, but that list is probably pretty long.
And to be fair, Alex, you brought this up too about like Las Vegas. I'm fine when it's a natural caution.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
When it's a debris caution or when it's this car is slow. It's not stopped, but it's slow. We're going to throw a caution. Or if it's like this last weekend with Logano and LaJoy, those are bullshit.
Yeah.
Did
Las
you
Vegas, I loved that race, right? I wanted so much for the 18 to win that race just because of all the shit he had been going through in the weekend. That was a classic NASCAR race. We saw passing everywhere. But I wasn't disappointed with NASCAR that the caution came out. I was just pissed that somebody fucking wrecked.
Did you guys touch on like about Coda at all? Like with how like I'll just say it anyways. Like whenever Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was like slowly coming to us, so they didn't throw. Did you touch on that already?
Yeah, that was a part of what we already touched on.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know. So and
you
guys brought up the fuel mileage races and stuff, and I know we talked about it a couple weeks ago. The summer series, we always saw Pocono, Michigan, Watkins Glen, New Hampshire, and Pocono and Michigan again. Those races were always conductive of strategy racing. We even see it. If you look at some of the better examples, I look at 2011 as one of the years where two of the most famous races were fuel mileage races. That's when Kevin Harvick got his nickname the closer in 2011 at the Auto Club 400, and then backed it up again with another fuel mileage win in the Coke 600 when he passed Dale Jr. on the last lap. Those races were epic. We don't see that. Long gone are the days of the summer series where we have those exciting fuel mileage finishes. And do you guys think that is NASCAR trying to cater to the small brain fans, or is it just them trying to have pack racing everywhere?
Both. I think both. I think a lot of the folks that really like this, wadding each other's shit up, go on the last lap, and 17 cars all fighting for the same bit of track position with a green, white checkered, are the same fans who don't go out and see local races, who have never seen a late model run, who have never watched any other form of motorsport other than NASCAR. And I don't like calling people out, but I'm sorry. Dakota Rutledge is one of these people. I just grind my fucking teeth when he calls certain races a great race because he doesn't watch anything else. And again, I love the dude personally, but it just irritates me because I know he's never been to a local track. And that's some of the best. When I tell you guys, some of the best racing you'll ever see is at your local track with two late model veterans who are in their 40s and 50s, completely duking it out and trying to save their own tires and trying to save their equipment and pass each other cleanly. It is a great race, and that's what I want to see back in NASCAR again. If we keep going down this road, we will never see a photo finish again where cars aren't sideways. Never. Like the whole Jimmy Johnson, Bobby Labonte at Charlotte, Jimmy Johnson, Carl Edwards at Atlanta, Jeff Gordon, Kevin Harvick. We will never see that again because these fans, as soon as they aren't completely trashing each other in the fence, are going to call it a bad finish.
Yeah, I agree with Colton on that one 100%. I'll even be honest too. Like local short track racing, you'll find, if you've never gone to one of those, you'll definitely find like a newfound respect for racing itself. Because I'll be honest, like I went to my first ever like local short track race about 4 years ago, and that completely changed my entire perspective on NASCAR. And I'm like, okay, I get this now. Like I get why everyone liked the early 2000s, even like the late 90s and everything. Like I get that, I understand it. And now like we're catering to that new generation now, because you look at the highlight reels for the upcoming race or whatever, and it's all like either crashes or the close finish that was always manufactured there late at the end. So like I guarantee you when we go back to Atlanta this summer, we're going to see all the 3 wide 2 wide restarts and stuff, and it's like, oh, look what we can do here, like that's what we're going to see.
Yeah, the sad thing is it sells tickets, but I don't know. This is probably going to be way outside of the realm of the realm of motorsports than I should be on this podcast. But I think it's just because our country as a whole has been getting dumber for the last 40 years. Like everyone is just dumber. They can't. And then you add in social media in the 2010s, and it's dopamine firing. And that's why we scroll. That's why we have TikTok. I mean, TikTok got shit for putting their max video to 3 minutes over 1 minute because people just don't want to sit through a 3-minute video. I'm guilty of that myself. I'm not going to say I'm not. But society as a whole, I mean, we've just been getting dumber, and the attention span thing, as much as I hate to say it's not, or I hate to say that it's real, it's real. It kills me to say that because I feel like if we stop treating fans like they are dumb, if we go about it in the ways that we did in those 90s and early 2000s broadcasts where we explained exactly what parts of the cars do, exactly what the differences are between this guy running a rubber and this guy not running a rubber, what the track bar and the wedge does. If we go through what happens in a 4-tire pit stop, well, why is he doing better after this one? Well, he made a air pressure change on the right sides that was better for him, and this guy didn't. If we treated it as a sport and not as entertainment like we have been, I think we would bring the casual fans to a higher level, and they would become like we are, knowledgeable about the sport, and be like, oh, well, this is kind of dumb. This is kind of bullshit. This is kind of manufactured. And I think you can see that if you bring in a fan and you sit them down and they start watching with you, I feel like as they watch each race, they will learn to be more receptive to a longer run, a strategy race, stuff like that, especially if you're showing them other motorsports like IndyCar, Formula One, Supercars, IMSA, what have you. I don't know.
And let's not, we've shit on the broadcasting a ton, especially this year, it seems like.
Absolutely.
But let's not act like NASCAR is only at fault here. The broadcast plays a huge factor into the dumbing down of the sport. When was the last time you heard a play-by-play call on a race?
NBC, they do it. Rick
Yeah.
Allen does it.
Rick Allen, Dale Jr. do it great. Fox, I cannot recall a single good, long play-by-play call at all this year. As soon as they get out of the first turn, whatever track we get, they start branching off and talking about, oh, this driver does this and so on and so forth. When was the last time you heard on Fox wedge and track bar discussed? They'll say, oh, they're making a track bar adjustment. They're making a wedge adjustment. When was the last time you heard them explain what that does for people who are watching?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, even Larry Mack, when he chimes in, when they have him spotlight, he says some shit that's like very basic.
Not Larry Mack. Yeah. Larry Mack's supposed to be America's crew chief, not America's cheerleader.
Yeah.
And this is going to continue down this road until we get new broadcast partners and we get folks who actually want to, we get a bidding war, so to speak, and folks want to take this sport seriously. And see, it's going to take some really, really big names calling this out. We've started to see a little bit this year. We saw Anthony Alfredo, I think it was this past weekend, say, my God, what a cringeworthy pre-race show. The broadcast is why a lot of non-NASCAR fans do not take our sport seriously. We have a joke fest for 2.5 hours, and then we have Clint screaming into the mic while Mike Joy tries to talk and actually explain what's going on. It's going to take a Dale Jr. It's going to take Tony Stewart doing it relentlessly. It's going to take some of these other guys saying, hey, this kind of fucking sucks. Can we take this seriously and cater to some of these diehard fans? We're not going to gain any new fans if every week we only cater to the brand new ones, because eventually those brand new ones are going to get tired of it and they're going to want to learn a little bit more, and they're going to go to Formula One. They're going to go to IndyCar.
I honestly used to love the pre-race shows back in the day because they give you so much like insightful knowledge. Then they interview almost half the field, and then even they do interviews with drivers on the trucks as they're waving to the fans going by. I don't even know if they do that anymore because I'll be honest, I don't even watch the pre-race show anymore because it just doesn't. It's just not as interesting. I used to be a kid growing up watching that, and I'd be like upset if I missed some of the pre-race show because I was just so excited to hear what kind of stuff there's going to be going on. But like you said, most of the time it's just like a joke fest or something that's not even worth it. I mean, you have the grid walk. That's not even that good compared to what we used to have. I mean, that's just cringe. That's just cringe itself. I don't want to see him running up and down.
Michael Waltrip dropping a taco on Denny Hamlin's car.
Yeah, come on.
Come on. That was
TV gold, but it's a comedy.
Yeah, you're right. But I will say to Jared's point, they do still talk to people before the race, but it's not about the racing. It's not about your car. It's not about what you're going to do to win. It's not about how are you looking for the playoffs. How are you doing? This last 6 race stretch, you've DNF'd 3 of those times, and the other 2 times you've had 35th or lower places. What is going on with your team? Stuff like that. They're not analytical at all with it. They're like, so we saw that you sold T-shirts because Kyle Busch said something about it. That's wonderful. You got any other T-shirts you want to sell this week? Like, it's just fluff. It's like everyone thinks that we need to be catering to people that are stupid.
Go back and watch.
I think that's an insult to the rest of us.
Right.
And even new fans come in, honestly.
Yeah, go back and watch like an early 2000s pre-race show and just see how insightful and how awesome those used to be, because that's what I used to live for back in the day.
Yeah, you remember Wally's World?
Yes.
He used to hot lap around the track and actually explain to you, okay, there's a big bump right here, et cetera, et cetera.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I wish they would do that. They kind of do it with NBC a little bit. But even NBC, the broadcasters seem bored after about 3 to 4 laps. You got guys like Letarte and Junior trying to breathe life into it. But unless there's a 6-7 wide restart and things like that, they just kind of seem bored.
Yeah, and that's it. I don't know what happened. I remember Rick Allen as a just very energetic, very exemplary person when he was in the truck booth. He was someone I looked forward to broadcasting every weekend, and now he's been memeified so much. I don't know if it's just a production crew saying, "Hey, you need to tone it down. We need to be this, that, and the other." And then even Mike Joy this year, I don't know if it's because he hates Clint Boyer, because I hate Clint Boyer. I will just assume so. I think that's it. I mean, to the point of the broadcast themselves, I'm just going to go out and say it. Clint Boyer's a fucking Darf.
Yep.
He is. I mean, I heard that he was praising and calling people out on Twitter about how just exemplary Atlanta was. And then, Brett Griffin comes on DBC and says he'd have been the number one hater of that racetrack had he been in the car.
Right.
So,
yeah. And I'm always on the side of we don't need people in the booth who are a good guy and kind of fun to be around. We need guys who are smart, who are analytical, who can provide insight. I think that's why Letarte does so well in the booth. And Dale Jr. and Jeff Burton do so well in the booth because they're not super partiers anymore. They're analytical. They take it super serious. And to me, it seems like Clint just shows up, throws on a suit, slams back a beer, and says, "All right, what are we doing this week?" It's fucking irritating.
That's really good. That was a really good impression.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? Jesus Christ. So I'm gonna ask Jared this one. I don't know how long you've been a NASCAR fan, as far as how far you've gone back and watched broadcasts and stuff. But with Colton bringing up that point, do you remember the difference between Saturday and Sunday Darrell Waltrip?
I can't really honestly answer that one. I remember I watched my first full season was 2007, and I have gone back and watched a lot of races from probably like early to. I've even watched some late 90s races too, but I've watched a couple of Busch races back then too. So I can't really give you an honest answer on that one at the moment. I'd have to actually go back and watch some of those right now.
I would like for you to go watch some practice races. I want you to go watch Darrell Waltrip on TNN, whether that's Busch series, that's probably Busch series races from the 90s. Go watch Darrell Waltrip, and I guess Colton, I'll let you explain the difference between Darrell Waltrip, the character, and Darrell Waltrip, the race analyst.
Yeah. Okay. Give me some insights on that.
So Saturdays used to kind of almost be like the fun or the party. You had Michael race in the Busch series too, and that's when he was doing all right. I'll send you a couple links. There are a few that you can put on just in the background. You can hear the difference just in the way he calls a race between the same weekend, a Busch race and a Cup race. Don't get me wrong, Darrell's always been kind of the goofier character, but there was a clear and concise line between the job and the fun. And like I said, I think like 2003 Darlington was a really good one where he was making a great race call. Whereas the race before was kind of just poking at it.
Okay, yeah. Give me a couple links and I'll watch some of them these next couple of days.
And when they first started in Fox, one of the biggest things was, and you can see the progression of Darrell Waltrip, the character being built. He always did boogity 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 from his third race on Fox. That was something that was a staple for him. I don't blame that. That was fucking awesome. I don't care about how jokey it sounds or whatever. But you could look at him on a Saturday at practice. You could look at him on a Friday at practice, and he would be just as, if not more, insightful than Larry Mack. But on Sunday, he was no different than Digger, just another cartoon character.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really cool going back and watching old qualifying videos. I've got, I think, most of the 2003 season saved just because that was kind of my favorite year. And it's amazing the difference in the broadcast. Don't get me wrong. There was a difference when he would call the Busch race versus the Cup race, but it was still – there was a seriousness to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is actually kind of interesting. I'll have to dig into this a little bit and give my opinions on the next show about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, with all that, I want to circle back around one more thing before we kind of move on to some more stuff. Colton, you mentioned a couple of races. You mentioned the 2001 Jeff Gordon versus Kevin Harvick race. You mentioned the 2007 Jimmy Johnson and Carl Edwards race. You mentioned the 2006 Coke 600. These are all mile and a halves that I'm listing, by the way, so just keep that in mind. I'll throw in the 2012 Atlanta race as well. And I want you guys to tell me what those all have in common, because I think I fucking know.
Long runs to end the race?
Absolutely. Long green flag runs to end the race. And you know what they did? They finished in photo finishes. So let's circle back around to that. How can we look at highlight videos from the last 30 to 40 years, see this kind of stuff happening, and genuinely think that that's going to happen in a green white checker?
Darfs. Because there's a ton of people who talk on Twitter about the old races who I guarantee have never gone back and watched a full-length race, who have never said, all right, there's nothing on today. I'm going to sit down, scroll through my phone. I'm going to watch this race just as it was happening live, which is something I love to do, especially in the offseason.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
See, I do that during the season. I'll watch that. Like this week's Richmond week, I'm probably going to go watch I watched the 2011 Richmond race that Kyle Busch won.
Yeah, that was a good one. But to see these whole strategies play out and hear the analytics over the entire course of the race is phenomenal. And it makes you see the giant holes that we have in racing now and in the broadcast now. It is amazing to go back and look at like the 2001 Atlanta race and watch what led up to that finish. Everyone knows Harvick by inches, but you don't know that there were 6 cars and Harvick was at the very back of that kind of group pack, and that we're all using different lines and searching for grip, trying to sniff a draft here and trying to get away from it and break the wake here. That one's fantastic. The 2005 Atlanta with Carl Edwards and Jimmy Johnson, where Carl was hunting him down and you'd see him make a mistake and have to gather it up and spend another 2 laps building momentum. That was when I look back at when I loved NASCAR as a kid, that's what I think of, is because I'd always, I'd kind of do kids chit and play around for the first, 3 quarters of the race, but I'd always make sure I watched like those last 40 laps and figure out what was happening here. What kind of run are we going to have? That's what I miss. You're not going to get it with a green, white checkered. You're going to get people wadding their shit up because winning is so much more important now. I miss
the build up. That's the word I'm going to use with it. There's a nice little build up of it. Coming 10 to go, like, oh, he's 2 seconds, but every single lap they'd show, all right, he cut off a couple tenths off of this lap, cut another tenth off. Oh, there's lap traffic coming. Look at this. We got a potential close finish. But now it's like there's 10 laps to go, and everyone, like, guarantee, how many times have you thought, like, when there's 10 to go, like, all right, when's the caution coming out? Yeah, I didn't used to think that whenever I was a kid. I would always I would grow up basically thinking like, all right, there's 10 to go. If he has like a massive 5-second lead, I'm like, all right, this race is pretty much over. But then I could also see like, all right, he's catching him. There's a chance for him to come back. Like, I'll use let's go Texas 2007 fall race. Whenever Matt Kenseth was leading and Jimmy Johnson was lap by lap, catching him, 2 to go, passes him and wins the race.
Yeah,
that's the races I miss. That's the races I miss. The whole build up to the final ending, like one of those last lap passes or late passes, and that come naturally without like a debris caution or something. That's what I like live for. Green white checkers are cool, like every once in a while, but those natural playing out races, like even like last year's Fuel Mileage race at Pocono, that was awesome.
Yeah, one of those things that you said was you look for the caution now, and I could say Las Vegas. That's exactly what I started doing. I was like, please no caution, please no caution, please no caution, because that's something we haven't seen in a long time. A long green flag run on an intermediate track where someone was actually able to catch the leader. That's what the 19 was doing to the 18. We probably know that they were going to battle. Maybe the 18 keeps the win. Maybe the 19 grabs it. But we're not going to find that out until the end of the race. Cut short by caution. Exactly what we didn't want. So I look back at that race versus Kansas Fall 2020, and we had a 40-lap run to the end. No one could fucking do anything with it. So
right.
We have the cars now to get back to this classic NASCAR era, but we've got stages and necessity for action from the higher ups to want to force something exciting when we can create something exciting genuinely. And that's what's disappointing to me.
Yeah, I would, and I've said it on here too. What makes good races good are the fact that there are, that not every race is a barn burner. When I was a kid watching, there were times where Jimmy Johnson was leading by 10, 12 seconds, and I was praying for a caution because I knew that so-and-so behind him was on fresher tires and they just didn't have enough time. But there were also times where I saw guys clicking down great lap times, and you don't always get that great finish. You see them clicking off lap times, and they just run out of time. And that kind of, deflates the sails. But for a good 10, 15, 20 laps, you were on the edge of your seat hoping, man, is he going to catch him? Is he going to catch him? You're not thinking, holy crap, no caution. Please no caution. Please no caution. It's just a difference in a mindset there to where now it's shitty that we expect cautions when we really shouldn't. It's kind of like, expecting that your dog's going to chew something up if you leave him home. It just fucking sucks.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think it's been a pretty decent episode tonight. I will ask before we go ahead and hit our outro, Jared, do we have anything else that we want to talk about?
Not that I could think of. I think you guys touched on everything, and I said what I need to say about those things. I got all my hot takes out of the way, so I'm looking forward to Richmond this week. I actually think that after going to Richmond last year, I think this new car is actually going to put on a really good race this weekend, so I'm actually really excited to see what happens.
All right. Yeah, me too. So about that, we do want to shout out, even though Nathan Ball was not with us tonight, he is currently working on a JGR/Richmond article. And if you know what that article is going to be about, but it's going to be a very good look into the analytics of what JGR does right at this racetrack. Is it going to flow over into the next gen platform with the Toyota woes for 2022 so far? And that's going to be up sometime this week if he's already not posted it while we've been doing the show tonight. So shout out to him. Go check out fanfuelmotorsports.com to go see that article. We'll have more stuff coming your way. I've got my 6-race points format already in the works, and we'll have that out sometime later this week as well. Going to go ahead and shout out that one of our favorite guests, Kevin from Virginia, will be also going to his first NASCAR race this year at Richmond for his home track. And then let's also let you know that the week after the Bristol Dirt Race, which I think is 3 weeks from tonight, we will be doing another edition of Wide Open Fan Fuel. So get ready to get on the show. We got 10 spots. You guys can come fill in, and we can have a whole roundtable discussion about what happened at Bristol and whatever else you want. Guys, you have anything else to add before we shut her down?
No, I'm set. That's going to be a fun episode. I'm really looking forward to that. Check out Nate's new article. I've been working on an article for like 3 weeks now. I really need to kind of get going on it about a Twitter celebrity. So keep an eye out for that. I will be sharing it as soon as it comes live. Other than that, I'm good.
All right. I will not be on the show the next 2 weeks. The guys will be carrying the torch on I will be at work. We're going to be doing some what ifs. We're also going to be doing something else special. So we're not really going to have any fan spotlights in the next couple of weeks, but we are going to be doing some cool stuff, not just race recaps or woke or joke like we have been. We're going to get back to our roots and do some crazy shit because we're fueling some really interesting talk by fans. So we'll see you then next week. Furthermore on.
I got one more thing.
All right, go ahead, Jared.
All right. So since we're kind of since we have the thing called the West Coast Swing, I saw this on Twitter also. Since we had our West Coast Swing, what are we going to call these next 3 race swing? Do we count Bristol Dirt as a short track, or is that just a dirt track?
I count it as a short track.
So we got 3 short tracks. So we got 3 short tracks in a row. Is this like a short track swing, or what would you guys call this?
Yeah.
Short tracks.
I'll think of a witty name.
I was just curious on what you guys would think of for that.
Yeah, I'll think of a witty name for it. I think that's a good idea.
All right.
I don't know.
Yeah, sorry I cut you. Sorry I cut your outro on that. I was just thinking of that about before we left.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see y'all next week. Check us out on the website, fanfuelmotorsports.com, Twitter, and Facebook and Instagram at fanfuelmsm, capital F, capital MSM. Go ahead and check us all out on Twitter. At our apps that are on the screen right now, and we will see you next week. All right.